Hi, my name is Jace. I want to talk about piracy for a minute. I am a published author, a content creator, and a marketer. I have worked in Hollywood and marketed for many other creatives over the years, as well as I am an avid TV and movie enthusiast. I love a good story. Whether it is nonfiction or fiction, stories are the only things that keep this world moving. My wife is also a creative. She is a songwriter and a performer. Um, and I'm going to be honest. So, in the 90s, when I first learned about piracy, specifically internet piracy, um, I was young and tech savvy and got into Napster for the very first time, and I was pretty astonished to learn that that was internet piracy. Uh, and over the years, I in the late '90s and early 2000s, I I became very anti piracy, protecting creative rights. Um, and then into adulthood, getting into tech and marketing, and helping people, monetize their business efforts and creative efforts with automation and marketing. I started to realize there was some contradictions in my logic about IP laws, because I was becoming, uh, a distribution automator, helping people self-publish, and I realized pretty quickly um, that for most creatives, they have something that their copies promote, such as um, authors, like digital copies like ebooks and audiobooks are a great way to gain fans. They're very easy to share and a great way to get fans. So like even just the books alone are a great way to get fans, which fans are the ones who buy books. Customers are the ones that you have to please, and they want to dictate the creative process. Customers are a nightmare for creatives. But being in the marketing world, which is the business side of the creative arts, I started to realize pretty quickly that there are two warring ideologies. Um, there is IP rights, specifically copyrights for creatives, and what creatives want. And I thought those were aligned for many years. And then it just hit me. Copyrights do not protect the creatives, they protect the copy makers, they protect the marketers, like I had become. And this was very unsettling for me because um, at first I was worried because it sounded and seemed like a really big conspiracy, and I didn't really want to buy into it. But then I realized, it's not a huge conspiracy. It's just most people don't know this stuff because patents and copyrights, all those kinds of contract laws, they're boring as hell. There's no story there that people really care about. There's no story to tell the truth of it that people really care about. The only story we have is, uh, downloading a song or downloading a movie is like stealing a car. It's like, no, it's not. If you share a CD or a movie or a DVD with someone, like that's the same thing as internet sharing. Like that's the thing is in the 90s, being on the side of tech, I learned that in the 90s, um, people weren't really sure if the internet was going to make it. Most people didn't think the internet was going to make it because it was peer-to-peer distribution of information, which when information can be anything digital at that point, you realize that if movies and music can be digital, well, shoot, that is the entire business model of Hollywood and the record labels. So they were banking pretty hard that the internet wouldn't take off. So they just lobbied to make internet sharing illegal, which they could never really get past with sharing VHSs, sharing DVDs, sharing CDs. They could never make those illegal. They tried to make it illegal to sell those things secondhand, like at a garage sale or to a used movie and bookstore sort of thing. But they had a lot of trouble. They also tried to outlaw VCRs with the record function on them. They also tried to outlaw blank VHSs. This is how long the movie industry and the entertainment industry as a whole has been trying to make certain things illegal that, you know, are not even morally questionable. I discovered a video by Neil Gaiman about piracy and something he discovered. You should probably check that out here on YouTube. I might splice this in there in a future video. But Neil Gaiman talks about, he's a published author, best-selling, wrote American Gods, many other books, genius storyteller, one of the best in the world right now in my opinion. Lots of TV shows based off of his books right now. And he talks about how internet piracy literally helped him sell more. It literally helped him become popular in a country where his books weren't really selling. And that's something really, really interesting, because one of the things that bugged me for a while, long before I ever realized that, you know, copyrights are a scam that is sold to creatives, is if you want publicity, you know, if you're a musician, a great source of publicity is the radio, but also so is piracy. And if you want to get fans for anything, whether it's a movie or a TV show, sharing it is a great way to do it. Focus groups for TV shows and movies are actually a huge way that PR industries gain that viral buzz, get people talking about a movie, get people blogging or, you know, whatever, reviewing peer-to-peer, and they create that buzz and they let it work over time. So they literally, like, even the PR companies, even the marketers, which copyrights, they protect their rights to share the copies as they see fit. It's realizing if we're sharing things for free, we're not hurting the creatives, because we're going to find a way to support them if we become their fans. And we become the people that they hate to have as their, you know, customers if we get upset about something not being worth it, especially with, you know, the abundance of digital content available today. So it's actually more beneficial for anyone that is a creative that can create something digital to give away all the digital copies. And this is really a really disruptive thing, because a lot of people think that's giving away a lot of money on the table, but distribution of copies is less profitable than ever. That's why, you know, movie industry is kind of collapsing in on itself, trying to figure out new ways to make money through advertising. They've switched from mostly movies to mostly TV now, producing that stuff with ads. There's a lot more product placements with movies than ever before. And these are all things that I learned on the marketing and consulting side, especially in Hollywood. And we've already seen the collapse of the record labels, where now it's mostly distributors, and people are self-publishing, and labels are small labels that really just have resources. There's very few big labels left, and they're having trouble keeping up with all the little labels that are really just creative collectives, almost like little community-wide creative collectives starting up all the time. The same thing is inevitable to happen in the Hollywood industry of entertainment. But, you know, I feel like after learning about marketing for so long, realizing that before we had marketing as we know it, which is really PR and ads, I I learned that Edward Bernays literally invented the term PR, because up until then it had been called propaganda. They didn't change anything they did. Actually, after they changed it from propaganda to PR, they created certain things like subliminal messaging, which is thanks to Edward Bernays, who literally wrote the book on propaganda. If you look up the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, you'll find his manifesto from the 1920s about the time he was getting the general public into buying this new stock that banks had invented for him, called common stock. So he got the general public in on buying stocks in the 1920s, which may have been directly tied to the collapse in 1929. I'll have to look into that. Anyways, yeah, I kind of keep this one pretty close to my chest. I'm a little nervous about sharing this because, this is my personal truth that I got from years of consulting in tech and marketing and industries, helping business people provide services for creatives, and now recently going out on my own as a creative, full-time, which I haven't, ever done in my adult life. I bought in completely to the, you got to be responsible, a responsible adult in society. You can't just be an artist. And I'm realizing that even with a fraction of my business and marketing knowledge and, understanding of budgeting and finance, it's a small fraction compared to more analytical minds, I'm able to monetize myself as a creative. So definitely trying to share the knowledge I have with other creatives. And here's probably one of the biggest life hacks. Let's talk about piracy specifically. So pulling the curtain back for a minute. If you get a letter in the mail from your internet service provider, it's not from their attorneys. It's from attorneys that are hired by the entertainment industry to file their copyrights, and the attorneys make a lot of money enforcing these copyrights. Hollywood doesn't make the money enforcing the copyrights. They just bought into what these lawyers said about them protecting their creative property, when really it's just intellectual property. They rarely ever did the companies that own the IP create the IP. They usually pay somebody who created the IP, and then they own the IP, and they own the creative rights at that point. And they think that the lawyers are helping them monetize this, but they're really not. They're just making it more expensive to market their own IP. Regardless of whether or not, the studios, they get to protect IP from creatives that may never do anything with it that they could. They distribute it to the masses. They make sure the creatives get paid. Sure, they could, get paid more, but at the end of the day, when they're paying these law firms millions of dollars that could be going to the creatives, but it's going to these attorneys that, file copyrights that are almost useless in a digital branding age where you can point back to a source without a legal method, or click back to a place where people can even buy things. Like, it's almost like copyrights are a moot point. And we know now that, fan fictions and fan creatives and like fan films are actually great marketing for the original IP, and doesn't confuse anyone that, who has the original IP. Usually the fans point back to that all the time anyway. So at the end of the day, it's really the attorneys that protect IP are giant con men. And they're conning both the creative industry and creatives, because they'll send these letters, and there's two different letters they send. If you are uploading files to share on a peer-to-peer sharing site, like a torrent site, so not something like Facebook, not something like Google Drive, that's not a public-facing platform. Even if you have your profile public, Facebook will go through the effort of taking stuff down that is protected by copyright, so you don't have to worry about uploading anything to there. It's really just these torrenting sites. So if you've never, uploaded a file, to create a torrent file, to, share that on a torrent tracker, know what any of that is, you don't have to worry about this part. But these are the only people that actually can risk going to jail. That's why privacy is so important to them that share these things. Because the attorneys can send a letter to the internet service provider, and with Homeland Security, get a warrant to get their information. They do a raid, get their hard drive, and that's the proof that, corroborates that they uploaded the file, that they own that account that uploaded the file, and they also have evidence of that file on their computer, even if it's deleted. They can find evidence on there as long as they haven't wiped the computer. So a lot of these people who share, they'll wipe their computers regularly and use external drives to store the actual files. That's how they can protect themselves. Whereas if you're just going onto the torrent sites and you're terrified that, you're going to get a knock on your door and go to jail or get a massive fine, here's the crazy truth. You could, but only if you respond to the letter that comes in the mail. Let me tell you what that means. So the attorneys, here's the process. The attorneys, they send a letter to the ISP, which is not allowed to give you a heads up. They're legally obligated to forward that to you because they are your legal representation. So the attorneys that protect the copyrights for the Hollywood companies or the record labels or whatever, they send a letter to the attorneys of your internet service provider, whether that's Comcast, or if you're on the West Coast, it's called Cox, or whatever it is, like AT&T, any of these, their attorneys get that, and their attorneys literally have to send you that letter without any heads up or context of your rights, because the company is their client, not you. So they don't have your backs. They need that plausible deniability for the company, not telling you how to undermine another industry. So at that point, they forward that to you in, an AT&T or a Comcast or whatever your internet provider is, in one of their envelopes, and they forward you that letter from a different attorney. And this attorney writes it like a story, like really, like they've learned from Hollywood. They are pitching you a story, and it's not a lie, but it's also not the truth. So what they do is they say they started a case file against you. They want you to call in with this reference number. And when you do, you give them that reference number. They pull up that case file that they've started, and they get your information because they don't have any of that. They're not allowed to get that if all you're doing is downloading things. They can't get that from the internet service provider because you're actually not doing anything criminally wrong. They can sue you civilly for aiding, like essentially, I forget the actual legal term, but like almost like aiding and abetting people who are sharing these sort of things. It's, the receiving of stolen goods type thing. Even though it's not stolen because it's making a copy. So it's kind of like if you draw, a perfect replica of the Mona Lisa, you're not stealing the Mona Lisa. If you build a bicycle, you're not stealing from Schwinn. If you build a guitar in woodshop, you're not stealing from Taylor Guitars. Like that's what they've correlated as stealing. It's not actually stealing. It's not theft. This isn't taxation. It's just really you got to get in there and see that they're just duping us. So at that point, they've sent you that letter and they ask you to call in. And when you do, they ask for some information because they want to send you more information on the case that they're forming against you as you speak. So when you give them that information, that's how they tie you with your admission of guilt, which is calling in with that case number. And at that point, literally everything you say is filling their case to civilly sue you. That's it. The way you prevent this, the way you protect yourself legally from this is tear up the letter and throw it out. That's it. That is the simple truth. And at that point, you're not hurting the movie industry. You're not hurting creatives. You're only protecting yourself legally from attorneys that figured out how to make money in between the movie industry and, the people providing you the internet that's too technically advanced for you to just like law. It's technically advanced. And at that point, they are capitalizing on the fact that you know less than them. I'm not going to go into stating whether or not, piracy is moral or what. Like, I think I made it pretty clear my position. Like, it is so subjective that literally whether or not it's moral or immoral is up to clever salesmen. It really is, because there's no difference between other things that you think are moral that you call sharing and sharing on the internet. There's just a lot of narratives that have been around for almost 30 years now telling us that it is wrong, that it is akin to stealing and theft. And that has to do with a lot of people like me, marketers that are really good at putting what they want ahead of what other people want, which is just sales. But when they put what they want ahead of what other people need, which in this case is legal protection, they're creating addicts to a system that are getting abused by attorneys. And most marketers don't even realize that they're perpetuating this. Even the marketers that set this up, they truly believed at that time that digital sharing would hurt their business. And now it may be the only thing that saves movies and TV and music. And if we share more, if we share the love, if we share the creativity, help creatives grow a fan base, we are doing the movie industry a favor. We are doing creatives a huge favor. We're taking a huge chunk of change out of the expense books of the people who hire creatives, such as movie studios and record labels. And we're freeing up a lot of cash for them to pay creatives more. If you go in there as an educated creative and you share this with studios and labels, you may get laughed at for a while, but the more people that say it and the more people who know that it's true, the more these industries that have been around for so long that they got duped by the legal industry, they're going to wake up to, the cold hard facts as well. And they're going to have your back. That's what it is to be a trendsetter. And that's what it is to be a creative. So hopefully this helped you. For more about this kind of stuff, check out my channel. I think it's about time on YouTube, or check out my page on Facebook, Quantum Deep Thoughts, or come over to our Facebook group, libraryofconsciousness.com. We'll take you right there. And explore what we're doing with this creative initiative to help give creatives that competitive edge in an over-analytical world. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope this helped you. If you know that it could help anyone else, please share it. Give it a thumbs up, give it a like, double tap it, share it, whatever you can do to support. Hit the subscribe button or follow. And really, if you know anybody that you think would benefit from this, send it to them. If you know anybody who you think disagrees with this, send it to them. if their argument is emotional or just it's illegal, realize that you now know more. And that's what it is. It's all the more you know, right? So, all right. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll see you next time.
When the web started, I used to get really grumpy with people because they put my poems up, they put my stories up, they put my stuff up on the web, and I had this a belief which was completely erroneous, that if people put your stuff up on the web and you didn't tell them to take it down, you would lose your copyright, which actually is simply not true. And I also got very grumpy because I felt like they were pirating my stuff, that it was bad. And then I started to notice that two things seemed much more significant. One of which was places where I was being pirated, particularly Russia, where people were translating my stuff into Russian and spreading it out into the world. I was selling more and more books. People were discovering me through being pirated. And then they were going out and buying the real books. And when a new book would come out in Russia, it would sell more and more copies. And I thought that was fascinating. And I tried a few experiments. And some of them were quite hard. You know, persuading my publisher, for example, to take one of my books and put it out for free. And we took American Gods, a book that was still selling and selling very well, and for a month they put it up completely free on their website, and you could read it and you could download it, and what happened was sales of my books through independent bookstores, because that was all we were measuring it through, went up the following month 300%. And I started to realize that actually you're not losing books, you're not losing sales by having stuff out there. And when I give a big talk now on these kind of subjects, and people say, well, what about the sales that I'm losing through having stuff copied, through having stuff floating out there? I started asking audiences to just raise their hands for one question, which is I say, okay, do you have a favorite author? And they say yes. And I say, good. What I want is for everybody who discovered their favorite author by being lent a book, put up your hands. And then anybody who discovered your favorite author by walking into a bookstore and buying a book, raise your hands. And it's probably about 5-10%, if that, of the people actually discovered an author who is their favorite author, who is the person they buy everything of, and they buy the hardbacks, and they treasure the fact that they've got this author. Very few of them bought the book. They were lent it. They were given it. They did not pay for it. And that's how they found their favorite author. And I thought, you know, that's really all this is. It's people lending books. And you can't look on that as a lost sale. It's not a lost sale. Nobody who would have bought your book is not buying it because they can find it for free. What you're actually doing is advertising. You're reaching more people. You're raising awareness. And understanding that gave me a whole new idea of the shape of copyright and of what the web was doing. Because the biggest thing the web is doing is allowing people to hear things, allowing people to read things, allowing people to see things that they might never have otherwise seen. And I think basically that's an incredibly good thing.